Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be looking at what is essentially a technical deep dive on the Flak 36. Due to the nature of modeling assets in the fidelity which we do, we end up having research threads that are extremely comprehensive, sometimes better than anything you'll find anywhere on the internet, really. And it occurred to us that considering our secondary aim as essentially a virtual museum, it would be really appropriate for us to make videos going in depth on the stuff we model. So today we've got MikeeCZ, who is beautifully modeled the Flak 36 and has become naturally a bit of an expert on the thing, so he's essentially going to run through it, how it works, technical explanations, how it was used, how it's operated, and yeah, we hope you enjoy. So I'll hand you off to MikeeCZ.
Right, Flak 36. I thought it'd be interesting to go over how things work around this gun, things that we researched and found out and learned about this iconic piece from World War II. For those who are not familiar, this is the Flak 36 88mm, or correctly said 8.8cm gun that was used for mainly anti-aircraft role, but also for anti-tank role or direct fire role, and also as an artillery piece. So 3 roles for this thing, very iconic, pretty much seen in all fronts and all corners of the world during the war, used even by countries like Greece and Bulgaria and many other, Romania. So not purely German. Germans did sell these to other countries, even prior to the war, but those would be mostly Flak 18s, which is just a previous version of this. They look very similar. And after Flak 36 there was also a Flak 37, which is again just a very similar version of this gun, pretty much the same thing. There was also a Flak 41, but that was a very different gun that was using the long 88, the same one from the King Tiger. And, that doesn't really compare with this thing at all, it looks very different. So Flak 18, 36, 37, this is the Flak 36. I'm going to be showing how things work around here, not necessarily trying to say that we are going to be implementing all these features, but I thought it'd be interesting for you guys because it was very interesting for us as well to learn these things. And this is not going to be any gameplay, just about the 3D model and showing you the features and stuff that this gun had. So let me show you its features. Main 2 ammo types will be armor piercing, which you can see here in black, and high explosive, which you can here see in yellow. The high explosive in this particular case is using the percussion fuse, which in other words is it explodes when it impacts. The fuse in particular is the AZ-23/28, and it's pretty much just your box standard HE shell with plenty of explosive filler inside. This is the APHE, Panzergranate 39 or 39, I think, and yeah, it has a small explosive charge inside as well. So it impacts the fuse, sets off the charge, and there is also an explosion. The idea is to cause the explosion inside of the target to cause further devastation. These were kept in wicker boxes like this. We can fit 3 of these rounds in there, or they were also came in tubes by 1. There were other means of storage, but this is pretty much the most common one. The only one I modeled anyway. So the gun in its travel configuration looks like this, with its side legs folded up, mounted to do 2 bogies. These are the SD202s, the Flak 18 had SD201s, and are very similar front to rear. The only difference really is the seat. I believe there was only one for each gun. And also the tow bar which technically should be mounted here on the front. So the seat would usually be at the back, the tow bar obviously at the front, which typically this gun would be towed by MikeeCZ 7, which was a heavy half truck. This gun is very heavy, 7.5 tons-ish. So there is actually quite a lot of stuff that cannot tow this, because it exceeds the tow capacity of, say, your typical truck. So how this works, especially in the bogies, let's start with the bogies. The bogies come apart from the gun something like this, and if I just lift it up to reveal some of its magic from below, these hooks hook up to these posts, pins, and hold the weight of the gun up. So if you can show you that applied here. There are also these hooks hooked up to these ones. I believe these are mainly taking care of front and rear forces, whereas these ones are taking care of the weight. The bogies also had a winch, just like you see here, with a chain. That is then using this hook, and that winch is only used to obviously winch the gun up and down from the bogies, but the loads themselves are taken care of by these hooks. The gun could be fired in this configuration, but only horizontally. If you would fire the gun up in the anti-aircraft role, you would snap the axles of these, and the gun would no longer be going anywhere. Also, if you would go beyond a certain safety arch front and rear, you would risk topping over the gun, and that would be a bad day. So how does the winch work? This part, this post axle, comes out slightly, so this whole section comes out to clear the fender. You can then unfold it and start rotating it, winching it through gears into the winch, which lowers and raises the gun. This lever here then, through linkage, goes through the bogie and releases or locks the hooks in place. Another lever, this one, is essentially a handbrake, which goes through the linkage into this part and into this cylinder. All these springs, all of that is related to brakes. There is a steel cable that goes through these conduits all the way down here into your typical drum brakes. They actuate this lever and brake the drum brakes, or activate the drum brakes. The thing had steerable wheels, which were linked with the steering link to this position here, and this entire structure was mounted to the main frame on a pivot, which is here. So the wheels could steer slightly. It wasn't a very far travel, but it could steer, which greatly helped with how tight corners you can do with this massive thing. Obviously, leaf springs, there's 10 leaves. The smallest leaf is really rather small, but there are 10 of them in total. And a fixed axle that goes from one side to another, doesn't really register to anything else. There is no more fixings other than the leaf springs themselves. So the thing would rock around quite a bit, because leaf springs have only so much damping, and so, you know, I'm not gonna go into depth about how leaf springs work. There is a high pressure, I believe, gas connector here, which goes through piping into the braking system too, and it also comes out in this hose here, which could be connected to a connector directly on the gun, which goes through the gun and comes out on the other side, where you could connect it to the other bogie, so both front and rear bogies were braked by using the brakes in whatever is towing the gun.
I want to take a moment to talk about what is actually allowing us to do all of this. Patreon. From as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to our content, exclusive updates from the dev team, exclusive builds, including one coming very shortly that will allow you to shoot the Flak 36 at various things, and a whole bunch of other perks which you can find on our Patreon, the link to which is in the description and pinned comment. Our current list of patrons is currently scrolling up the screen, and a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of them from the entire dev team. This project absolutely would not be happening without you, and for any viewers that really want this game to come to fruition, please consider it. If less than 10% of our current subscribers joined our $5 a month tier, we would have reached our funding goal already, and could go full speed on development with 2 devlogs a month. Now, back to the video.
These 2 boxes are just simple storage boxes. These 2 platforms could have multiple things mounted to them. Most typically there were reels with cable on them, which would be the cable used for the anti-aircraft ballistic aiming solution. These guns would be used in batteries and all connected to a center aiming station, which would be telling them via computer, via data cable, where to aim. They did not have sophisticated anti-aircraft optics, these things. It was down to that center computer. So I think that kind of covers the bogies. So let's move on to the gun. The gun in its deployed position looks like this, and you would have 2 wheels. This wheel is for the traverse, this wheel is for the elevation. This person here would sit, a gunner, one of 2 gunners would sit on the seat, look through the sights. The shield could be moved out of the way. Let's just remove it for now. And it was a monocular sight with the other eye being just blocked off. And the vision comes out here. By the way, even with the shield down, you could see through the sight, through this this cutout and a cross shape. And it was up and down, so you can actually aim for the elevation of the gun, and left and right for windage, for wind deflection. There was also an auxiliary aiming thing, and perhaps maybe one of you will know for sure. We couldn't find any place where it would clearly show whether there was some notch or anything to aim with, or it was just an empty tube like this. All the references I could find suggested that it's an empty tube like this, but Germans did have the tendency to add little notches for their auxiliary sights, so it wouldn't be too surprised. If any of you can find it, that would be much appreciated. So looking for the sight, obviously aiming the gun. The whole mechanism for aiming the gun was rather funny. It's rather clear that it's a afterthought and not something that the gun was intended for when it was originally designed. Because the gunner here essentially sets the sight to where he wants, or when they want the gun to aim, which then sets this linkage and this arm to that angle, and the second gunner, who's got the control of the elevation wheel, then elevates the gun to match that angle. So essentially, if you think about it, the front gunner requests an elevation, and the second gunner then delivers that requests. And on this scale, the second gunner could see the angle, and then with the gun elevation, this guy comes like this. And he would suppose just reports to the front gunner, okay, I've matched the elevation now, you're ready to fire. These 2 devices were used only for the entire anti-aircraft role, and these are essentially 10-volt bulbs that would light up according to the information coming from the ballistic computer that I spoke about earlier. And these two guys would just stand here, operate these two wheels to match the information with the gun's elevation and traverse. Not going to be used in anti-tank fight at all. The gun could be fired from both sides by the second gunner, who would just grab this handle and pull at it, or by a loader on this side, who would pull at this lever, which would go through this linkage and into this bit here, which would get lifted, and the firing pin inside of the breech block would then be, which then has a firing pin in the middle, and that releases a spring into the firing fuse of the round and down the barrel. So it could be fired from both sides. When the recoil happened during the shot, this part would go around here. This little item can actually rotate like this to get out of its way. It's on a spring which is mounted in here, but on the way back it has nowhere to get out of, so it actually rotate this whole thing this way. Sorry about the pivot point, I haven't got that set up right. And that would open the breech on the way back from the recoil. That would do lots of things actually. That is a very powerful thing and very complicated and mechanically fascinating thing that happens inside of the breech. It opens the breech to this position you see now. It rotates this lever sideways. Again, I'm gonna make an attempt. Something like this. It loads springs inside of this fixture. There are also ejectors in here which eject the spent shell outside, so it's ready to be loaded again. And the loader is just prepared to ram another shell in. The gun had a rate of fire of about 15 rounds a second when you were firing anti-aircraft in this mode, and if you were, sorry, did I say anti-aircraft? Anti-tank. If you were firing anti-aircraft, they would be able to do up to 20 rounds a minute, which is 1 round per 3 seconds. That's a very high rate of fire. And that's thanks to this complicated and really rather lovely mechanical solution that I have inside of this. It does a lot of stuff automatically and very fast. This cylinder here it's basically a damper for the recoil. There's also another cylinder inside of the recoil rail, which is basically a spring. So it's a spring and a damper combo, similar to what your car has in your suspension. And that is the firing of the gun. Elevation happens by a series of cocks and shafts that go into this little cock in here inside there, which then obviously meshes with this pinion, I think they are called pinions, and elevates the gun. During the elevation, these two arms are then pushed into these housings, which house two springs which assist with the elevation. The gun's pivot point is in this place here. This means that all of the weight of the gun, substantial weight of the barrel and everything, is well ahead of the pivot point. Normal in a tank, you would have the center of gravity of the whole assembly roughly where the gun pivots, so the gun would be balanced. In this fixture, the gun is substantially out of balance. This means that they have assist springs in these two, what you can basically define as, describe as tusks, to assist with the elevation up, otherwise it'd be too much of a work to do that, too heavy. There we go. These two wheels, by the way, operated in a slow and a fast mode. This little arm, depending on how it's engaged, is engaging currently, if I remember right, this is the... one of them is the fast, one of them is the slow. You'd have to flip it around its pivot so that it engages with this notch, and it would then rotate the wheel using the gears in the other modes. We got the rifling in, and it is the Flak 36 version of the barrel. That means it was made in 3 sections, or 3 tubes. That's what that was manufactured to make it easier to replace. And this basically says that it is a left-handed thread, where towards the left you loosen and towards the right you tighten, which is the other way around to normal, hence why it needs stating. The shield was 1 centimeter thick exactly, and was roughly just under 450 kilos in total when they added them to the guns. A fuse setter, again only used for anti-aircraft roll, and there was a guy sitting here rotating this lever, which was connected to a flywheel to store energy. This wheel was used to adjust the settings here, again to match. This is another one of those fixtures that have bulbs in them, to adjust timing. This thing was setting the fuses for airbursts for the HE shells if they were not using the percussion fuse, but the time delayed fuse. And the way that worked is that as the flywheel had energy in it, these two covers would come off. You could do 2 rounds at a time, so there would be actually 2 loaders running around and getting a new round from somewhere around here, ramming it in there, which would rotate the fuse on the tip of the fuse according to the setting, which would set the timer, and they would just ram it into the gun and fire. Obviously the timer would only start counting the moment the gun is fired and not the moment it's set. And the electrical connector from the center station would go on in here. This is a cover. The connector itself is underneath it to keep all the mud out, but it is a very early version of a normal data cable, really, that would then be connected to the center station away from the gun. And this part here would normally mount the panoramic sight, which was used for the artillery fire, and also to calibrate the directions for the anti-aircraft fire, but again not used for the anti-tank fire. In here is the spring for the recoil management, and you can pre-tension it using this rod by using a ratchet and rotating this, and that would adjust how much does the gun recoil when it fires. You've got a recoil indicator here, and the instructions clearly say that if you're firing fully elevated up, aka maximum elevation was 85 degrees, the recoil should be set to go no further than 700 mil. If you're firing horizontally like this, the recoil should be 1050 millimeters, and there should be a thing on the gun that as the gun recoils, it indexes it versus this, and it shoves the indicator into its position, so you can clearly see how far did the gun recoil during the last shot, which you can then compare versus your indicators here. If your target is 150 and it shoves it so back forth that it's actually against the red marker, it means that you need to stop firing because you're risking damage to the gun, and you need to either do maintenance to your recoil mechanism or tighten it, pre-tension the spring even further. This just was a hydraulic dumper, by the way. See, the bleeding nipples are here and refilling. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to cover. And please do let us know if this is interesting. We might be able to make such videos for other models as well. So we're doing our best to really go into quite a depth of our models, quite a lot of deep detail, and we learn a lot of things whilst we do this, and you know, we're quite delighted to share it with you. If I remove the shield, we can talk about the sight a little bit. That is a very intricate and complicated piece of kit, and this knob was used for wind deflection, left and right, so it would move the sight inside left and right. This knob is a filter within the sight. I believe the gun had grey, green, red and clear filters. Don't quote me on that list. Those were used to increase contrast or make it easier to see during certain light conditions. This rail here and the little window into the scope would be a place for a little lamp, which would enable illumination of the scope, or of the reticle inside, but we do not have that modeled. This is a angle of sight micrometer, which adjusts against this scale here, and this is the drums for ranging. The bottom one is the one that you adjust, the top one I believe rotates together, and these little arms then ride in those grooves to show you what the setting is. That is your basically ranging elevation setting, the fine elevation setting, that is. For crude elevation settings, you'd use this wheel, at least to the best of my knowledge. This indicator here is showing you how many turns towards left or how many turns towards right have you rotated the gun, because you only have 720 degrees rotation or traverse in both ways. If you go any further, you would start risking snapping the electric cables. So this item here will actually physically stop you from rotating or traversing the gun any further than 720 degrees in either way, and this is just an indication for the traverse gunner to know how far they have gone. When you set the elevation of the sight, it also rotates this arm, which then through this link controls this arm that then shows you the requested elevation by the front gunner. How were the outriggers lifted and folded, or folded and unfolded? There is a pin in here that if you can use this lever to rotate it the other way around, which allows this whole thing to swing up like this. And the pins and the leather would come with, of course. And then you just secure it via this arm here, and also there would be a chain that goes from this hook here, from this hook here to this hook here, and that's your leg lifted. The whole gun could be deployed or actually lifted to position to the transfer configuration in about 2.5 minutes, which is really incredibly fast for that time. So it was really a good piece of kit. As you can see, there was a lot of complexity for military equipment in World War II. It is unusually complex, but it has a lot of fantastic functionality in it. Very fascinating engineering. At least I personally think so. And hopefully you found this video interesting. let us know if you would like us to make more. And I'm sure I forgot some things about the gun, but as you can tell, there is quite a lot to cover. So here we are. Thanks guys, and let us know what you think.
To finish up with this, here's a little demo of the dynamic texture system of the 36, which you guys may remember seeing on the vehicles too. Of course, this means that as it gets towed through mud, it gets muddy, and if it gets hit with a high explosive shell and set on fire, it can be charged to a crisp with ash and stuff. But yeah, that was essentially the deep dive. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a little different from our normal content, but considering the nature of what we're doing as a virtual museum, it felt appropriate. But let us know if you want this done for other assets and vehicles too. And I'll see you guys next time.